Welcome back to another episode of the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. Yeah, it's my voice this time. This is weird, right? I am Jacob Bigelow, and I am joined, as always, by the host of this show, the men's basketball beat writer for Hail Varsity magazine and HailVarsity.com, Mr. Jacob Padilla. And we have a special guest this week. He covers football and women's basketball, also for the good folks at Hail Varsity, the magazine, and HailVarsity.com, Mr. Drake Keeler, here to help us talk about the Nebraska women's program to preview their season. So we get a little twofer. We're going to talk Colorado exhibition, and then, well, first and foremost, we're going to talk about the basketball program in Lincoln that is ranked to start the season, and that is Amy Williams' women's program, who over the weekend also had an exhibition contest against Washburn. Drake, you were there. How did they look against the Ichabods, one of the best college nicknames in college sports, on Sunday at PBA?
Yeah, they look good. They looked how you expect a top 25 team to look against a Division II team. No disrespect to the Ichabods, of course, but Alexis Markowski played about 20 minutes, had a double-double. She's going to be a big part of the team this year. So they look good and didn't have much trouble at all, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, we can start with Alexis there. You mentioned double-double. Yeah, clearly a mismatch for a Division II team. They just really had no shot of stopping her. Interesting that she was picked all Big Ten by the coaches, and Jazz Shelley didn't get recognition. What do you kind of see year two looking like for Markowski? And do you agree with that decision there that Alexis is going to be the lead player on this team this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine decision. I was a little surprised too, but I get it. Alexis Markowski had a big year, Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Just looking to grow on that. Something Amy Williams said is she'll be able to handle longer stretches of minutes this year. She said she had some fatigue issues at points during the season the last season. So that'll be big for just her stepping into an even bigger role. Had a quick rise last year. Now solidified in that starting role, so that'll be big. Jazz Shelley, I trust that she'll continue to be good. She in the exhibition she went 1 for 9. I didn't even realize that until like the day after. But obviously with the season she put last year, there's nothing really to worry about. But those are two very good players, and you could pick either one to put on your preseason All Big Ten team.
Yeah. So more general, like looking forward to the regular season, obviously kind of the big kind of elephant in the room with projecting this team is the injury to Sam Hybe. It was originally announced as a knee injury, not specifically what to do with the knee, just a knee injury. Then when you guys are talking to Amy Williams after the game on Sunday, she says it wasn't as serious as originally thought, and she could maybe play at some point this season. She didn't specify a timetable, but I mean, even just the hope to see Sam Hybe at some point is promising, for this group. You have to think, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. We still don't know exactly what it'll look like, but even getting her back near the tail end of the season would be huge. This team already returns, 4 of its starters that'll be active for the regular season opener. She'd be the 5th, obviously. So that'd be huge. But in the meantime, it'll be who fills in that other guard spot while she's out. On Sunday was Trinity Brady. It looks like she might, be the start in that spot. But, Kendall Moriarty, Maddie Kroll both played over 20 minutes. They're going to have sizable roles anyways, you'd assume. But, it'll be a lot of contributors, see how they can fill that space.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that news about Hybe. And I mean, we're kind of discussing this earlier today as we record this on Tuesday evening. Curious that we're hearing about this now. If Sam were to miss the whole season, she could take a redshirt this year and choose to come back. This was already her COVID year, but she hasn't redshirted yet. So I believe that she could have a full another year if she wanted to. I don't know if even leaving the possibility of coming back means that she wasn't interested in another year of college to begin with, because whether it be year 6 for her, right? Or if it means that she kind of sees this year's team having the chance to do something special and is willing to sacrifice a full year of eligibility in order to get back and kind of help them finish.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You think that might be, part of it, because even like before that news came out, one of the big things was that like, Sam Hybe really wanted to play with his team. That's what Amy Williams had said. So obviously that redshirt's on the table, and I'm sure they'd love to have her back for another year if she ends up just taking the whole season out. But having her back on the end of this season would also be huge. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out down, the stretch of this season.
And you mentioned Brady. I think that was probably one of the biggest takeaways from the exhibition. Just chance to see her get out there and play and start that. She's a player that has played 19 games in 3 seasons at Nebraska because of injuries. Yeah. And she was one that looked poised to be a starter 2 seasons ago. Started the first couple of games, went down for a season with a season-ending injury, and then went down with injury, missed a bunch of time, and then last season missed the entire season, wasn't able to play at all. So just seeing her back out there and got 5 points, 4 boards, 2 assists. You kind of see that being her role, just kind of that utility player doing a little bit of everything out there as kind of a bigger wing.
Yeah, definitely. All that and more kind of, Amy Williams talked about how she does things that don't show up on the box score as well. And that's kind of was reflected in the exhibition. She just does a little bit of everything pretty well. And, that would be huge for this team when you've already got 3 pretty great players in Jazz, Alexis, and Isabel Bourne, who's also there and doesn't get as much talk. But, that'd be really good to fill out the starting lineup that way, if she can be that consistent starter.
Absolutely. We mentioned Maddie Kroll. She played a little over 20 minutes, transfer in from South Dakota, an in-state product from Millard South. Jacob, you know more about her game than probably the both of us. How much you watched her play in high school. What do you think Nebraska women's basketball fans can expect to see out of Maddie if they haven't seen much of her play?
Yeah, she's tough, man. I think that's the first way to describe her. She's tough. She goes hard. She attacks the basket. Maybe not the most athletic player at that level, but she knocked down a 3, had an assist, grabbed a board. I think, again, she'll just be another kind of energy type of player that really kind of brings some toughness to the lineup, can play multiple spots in the backcourt, can handle a little bit, can play off the ball a little bit. I just kind of see her being a good energy connector piece coming off that bench if she gets in the starting lineup, whatever role that Amy Williams has envisioned for her. But yeah, like you said, I got to see her quite a bit playing for Millard South in high school, and she was always one of, if not the best player on the floor at that level, and had some success at South Dakota, and now she'll get to see if she can translate that down to her time in Lincoln.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I have to mention Alexis Markowski said, they want her to be that defensive dog, is what she said. And, Amy Williams says she is that. So adding that defensive presence, in whatever role she's in will be big.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hybe, so we talked about her being out. That puts a lot of responsibility on Allison Widener, who got a chance to start the second half last season, the last 9 games after Ashley Scoggins left the program, dismissal there. What's the key for Widener kind of taking a step forward in year 2? I know, like, watching the exhibition game, I think she's got to get a little bit better around the basket in terms of being craftier and kind of having a plan, as opposed to, I know in high school she could just go attack the basket and finish over players at the class that she played in. Doesn't work as well when you're at the college level. So what do you kind of see as being a key for her to step forward and kind of fill the role, the need of her, especially now with Hybe gone for a long time now?
Yeah, you kind of covered it, but everything you said, and she's talked to Sam Hybe in the offseason. That was something Amy Williams mentioned at Media Days, that Sam Hybe's been a part of Allison's growth and, showing her what she needs to do to, take that next step. And it was also mentioned that, she's looked at as one of the hardest working players on the team. It's kind of just another guard who can bring that energy and things like that while just trying to improve, some of the offensive things you mentioned.
Obviously, we mentioned Nebraska. They're ranked going into the season pretty big. They also have an early test against an in-state foe who also starts the preseason ranked after quite a run in the in-state tournament last year, and that's Creighton. That game's on Tuesday, November the 15th up here in Omaha. Barring a Nebraska loss to either another in-state program, UNO, or Houston Christian, or a Creighton loss to either of the South Dakota schools as they open with South Dakota and South Dakota State, that could be pretty big. Regardless,
Yeah.
I mean, how cool of a moment could / hopefully will that be for women's basketball in the state, you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be big. Two ranked teams. That's always exciting. In-state rivals. It's got everything you'd want from that early season matchup. And Amy Williams wants to sell out PBA this year. Obviously, that game's on the road, but you could see just good attendance for that game and just through the year is something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think it'll have a chance to be a great kind of showcase for women's basketball in the state. And I know Creighton's very excited about what they've got coming back. The reports out of Creighton camp are that Morgan Molly has made a big leap this year, the Crete standout, who, again, is another player I got to see a little bit in high school. And so it'll be fun seeing kind of Molly and Widener on opposite sides going back and forth there. And I know Nebraska got the best of them last year. I was kind of there for that game, pulled them away, but I think Creighton got a lot better in the second half of the season. So it'll be fun measuring stick early on for both teams. But what do you think about the non-conference as a whole? Do you see any other kind of key games there besides that Creighton one to kind of get them ready for what's going to be a really tough Big Ten conference once again?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that Creighton game is kind of just the highlight of it. But one of the things that stands out to me, I guess, is just that lead-in to conference play. I think it's like they have 5 straight home games, essentially. It starts with the first conference game against Wisconsin, but then they have the 3 against Stanford, Wyoming, and Kansas, and that'll lead into the game against Michigan, obviously a very good Big Ten team. So that's going to be a really fun stretch to watch, just see what they can do.
Yeah, and they looking at the schedule there, they get to take a visit down to Puerto Rico for their MTE this year, taking on Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and then Mississippi State. So getting to do a little bit of traveling there as well. And we talked about the Big Ten. So Nebraska entered the season number 22 in the preseason poll. They have number 5 Iowa, number 11 Indiana, number 14 Ohio State, number 17 Maryland ahead of them. And number 25, Michigan, a few spots behind. Looking at the conference's preseason votes, Nebraska was 5th for the media. They were outside the top 5 for the coaches. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough league again, but kind of what do you see as far as kind of realistic expectations heading into this season for Nebraska?
Yeah, I think you kind of just like want to see some of the same things you saw last year, where they upset, some of those teams and are just consistently competing with those top tier Big Ten teams like they did last year with some of the big upsets against Indiana, Michigan, things like that. I know, they'd love to get a win over Iowa. They lost to them 3 times last year. Obviously, they're the standout, I guess, in the conference. And then, once you get if they can do that and get back to the NCAA tournament, that'd be, and, win a game or 2, that'd be big.
Yeah, that Iowa matchup in January, if I assume the schedule is right, it looks like that's going to be a nationally televised Saturday noon game on Fox in Iowa City. That'd be a big showcase on the national stage for them. Yeah, the Big Ten's always tough, man. But if anything, if Amy Williams has shown us anything these last couple of years, it's that her crew is always going to be. They're going to scrap and claw and fight, man. That's just how they play, and yeah, they're gonna score plenty of points. And that was what I was going to say about that Creighton game too. If I had to make one prediction for the Creighton game, there will be plenty of points on the board that night. So, yeah, that's all I've got question wise. Jacob, you got anything else?
Yeah, we talked about Markowski, and you said better shape going into year 2. I think continuing to improve as a finisher around the basket is going to be a big key for her as well. I know she's continued to work on stepping out and knocking down threes on a small volume, but she hit 50% last year, stepped in, took a trailer 3 in the exhibition game, didn't go in, but good look. But I thought Izzy Bourne, you mentioned she doesn't get mentioned as much, but I thought she quietly took a step forward last season in efficiency, if not in overall production. And that's kind of the front court heading into the year. I know Bourne shot 37% from 3, which I thought was going to be the key for her to taking that next step. She had the skill inside, can score from mid-range and in the post. Getting a consistent 3 was the next step, I thought, for her, and she made it. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how that partnership develops between Bourne and Markowski. And we got the start of that when Bella Cravens last year went down with the injury, which allowed Markowski to enter that starting lineup, and she took that spot and ran away with it. And Cravens, unfortunately, transferred after the season, so they don't quite have as much depth and length in the front court this season. But kind of what do you think of the look of that front court? Obviously, Annika Stewart now will look to play maybe some more backup 5, where she was kind of more of a stretch 4 last season.
Right.
You've got Kendall Coley as a wing, who a lot of talent coming in the program. I think she's still kind of waiting to find, waiting for things to click a little bit, find her role in that. And the wild card here is obviously Maggie Mendelson, who is playing for the team that I cover right now in the basketball, or the women's volleyball team. From what I've been told, she's doing weekly kind of Wednesday night solo practices with coaches to make sure that she's not completely cold and rusty once volleyball season ends and she can join the women's basketball team. But how do you kind of see that front court coming together with all those pieces here? It's a lot back, but a little bit different look than what we saw at the end of last year.
Yeah, it should be pretty strong with like what you said, Alexis Markowski there and Isabel Bourne as well. Annika Stewart off the bench, that'll be big to watch. Maggie Mendelson as well, adding that would be important. But, with the change, it'll be nice that Markowski can handle, those bigger minutes when there is less depth. So just having her on the floor for longer stretches, well, you'd hope that kind of remedies any issues there would be with depth.
Yeah, Mendelson, nice addition. Wants to join the team at 6'5". Got everybody else there is like 6'2", 6'3", and under there. So everybody besides Mendelson and one other player was able to go in the exhibition. Has Amy Williams said anything about Nyla Dillard's status and kind of where she's at?
No, not yet. I meant to ask about it, but I have not. But she, missed the last 2 years with injuries after transferring from Texas Tech. So, if she, as another forward guard, can get on the floor, I think that'd be important too.
Yeah, and Amy is a coach that's like to use her entire roster. This year's team isn't as deep as in years past. We've seen Whitney Brown, Ruby Porter, both transferred out in addition to Bella Cravens. We're waiting on Dillard. They had 10 players, and 10 players played in the exhibition. So I think that provides an opportunity with those others transferring out for someone like Kendall Moriarty to take a step forward in year 2. She's got some length there as kind of a longer guard on the wing. I'll be curious to see kind of how she falls into the rotation and what she looks like in year 2 as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because, the team had, I want to say, 7 returners. One of them was Sam Ivey. And then the only 2 bench returners that had played last season. The two Kendalls, Moriarty and Coley. So it'd be nice for the team, see those two take another step forward.
Yeah. So I think we've hit on every player on the roster at this point. So do you have anything else we haven't hit on? Any kind of final thoughts on this team, this season, the opportunity in front of them?
No, not really. I feel like we covered all of it, but it'll be interesting to watch. Always a fun team to watch. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Cool. So I think I might try to head down early for that opener. That they're starting the season at noon on Monday.
Noon on a Monday,
which is an interesting choice. Although the men are also playing at home later that night, so I guess just cooperating, trying to make sure that everybody can get their games in on that opening night. But yeah, it was great to have you, Drake. We will kind of have you on periodically throughout the season to make sure we check in and follow Amy Williams' program, because I think this has a chance to be another really fun year for them. Bigelow, anything else?
No, just echoing what you said, man. Drake, we appreciate you taking the time, and we need someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the basketball program in Lincoln that has expectations. Sorry, Fred. What?
Yeah. Anyway, so if you want to follow Drake's work this season, Hail Varsity obviously is where you can go. And where can they follow you on social media, Drake?
Yep, it's just Drake Keeler, Drake, and then Keeler. So thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. So if you haven't already, give Drake a follow. And like I said, we will check in with him throughout the season. So we'll let you go now before we dive into the men's program, because you probably don't want to stick around for that.
Yeah. All right. All right. See ya.
Thanks, Drake.
All right. It's probably a good idea to kind of lead off with the exciting program, the kind of the happier topic. But
we don't want our listeners to be in a bad mood the entire time they listen. Like maybe you'll punch air every once in a while, but we don't want you doing that start to finish. We gotta butter you up a little bit with positivity, and then you know the rest. We talked to you guys last Friday, leading into Nebraska's charity exhibition contest with Colorado out in Boulder. I was in the building from start to finish. Colorado defeats Nebraska 72-61. Nebraska, to sum it up, just never had any rhythm on offense. When they had any momentum, even slightly swing their way, Colorado had an answer. They couldn't get any defensive stops. I think KJ Simpson might have hurt us doubting him, because he decided to have himself a game with 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists in 24 minutes. So he was the high man for the Buffaloes. Javon Hadley with 11. And then the two guys I mentioned each had 9 points on the same shooting, 4 of 8 in Tristan Da Silva and Neek Clifford. For Nebraska, oh man, where do we begin? So where do we begin, man? Obviously the big story is Derek Walker. Kind of noticed right when I walked in, like, oh, this is just Oleg and Blaze doing big man workouts with Adam Howard, who's the big man coach. Where's Derek? Maybe he's still getting ready. I'll give it a couple minutes. Couple minutes pass. No, it's still just Blaze and Oleg. And then they go back in for the last time. I'm like, yeah, we haven't seen Derek yet, have we? So that obviously we didn't know until he came out of the locker room in street clothes that he even made the trip. I'll be 100% transparent and say that I was told that before they left for Boulder that there was an inter-squad scrimmage that Derek was not a part of. We were told then on Friday that everyone except for walk-on Henry Burt was healthy going into the game against Colorado. So, that is a little contradictory to what I have been told, at least. Yeah. And after the game, Fred Hoiberg said that Derek did not play for healthcare reasons, not medical reasons, not an injury, healthcare reasons. His exact words that he said on the radio show after the game with Kent and Jake, and then repeated again to me and Robin Washut, who were the only Nebraska media members at the game. So,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think some fans, after hearing the radio interview, is like, is he just kind of stumble over his words? Like, was that a heat of the moment, like trying to evade the question type of answer? But he said he reiterated the same phrase after the game to you and Robin. So certainly this team just can't catch a break. That's the way that you get the worst record in program history for a head coach is, I think Hoiberg's made a lot of mistakes within some of its recruiting choices, some of the stylistic choices, the execution of practice. But on top of that, they've had so much bad luck between some bad bounces in games in terms of the way games have finished, to obviously they were hit hard by COVID, that 2020-2021 season, harder than many others. What's the way that that it impacted various members of the team. And now this, heading into the season, you play one game with your second or first most important player, and then you lose them before you even make it out of the preseason. So, we tried to do some digging on that to try to find out more, but people have been pretty tight-lipped. It doesn't sound like it's a case where it's a one-game thing and he'll be back. They very well might have to play without Derek Walker for a bit here. Again, I don't know how long exactly that'll be. Kind of, I guess, what were your impressions of them playing without Walker, and kind of what it did to the offense, the defense, and the rotations, probably most importantly?
Offensively, offensively, I think the most telling thing offensively was that their prized JUCO recruit big man, one, hardly played, and two, when he didn't exactly look playable. It was not a pretty scene for Blaze Keita. That's one way to put it. On the flip side, I think any observer was pleasantly surprised by Oleg Koyanets getting his first major minutes against, a high major opponent, and only the second time he's played. And coming off a redshirt year, finishes with 6 points on 3 or 4 makes, some good post moves, some good, looked. He was all over the place. He was kind of doing a lot. But offensively, when you don't really have, if your perimeter game isn't going, which we haven't seen it go much at all in these first 2 exhibition games, you want to be able to, call something or be able to draw something up for a guy inside. And right now, without Derek, they don't really have that, either with guards who can create in the lane or with big men who can take it off the dribble, because all of Oleg's moves were catch, move, finish, or catch, back down, move, finish. Nothing like just old man, like YMCA post game. It was effective, but he can't do nearly as much with the ball in his hands as Derek can. He's still pretty unpolished, but that's one way to look at it positively. Defensively, I still don't know what to think of this team defensively, let alone with or without Derek, because we've reiterated on this podcast this will be the second straight year we reiterate it, that plus minus is a flawed stat. But when the guy you brought in to be Mr. Defense, Mr. Energy, Mr. Pickup full court is negative 21 in plus minus against a high major opponent, that's just not good. That's just not. And Colorado, Colorado's a solid team. They're not they're not the class of the Pac-12. They'll be near the top. Like they're
They
not.
were picked 6th in the preseason poll, so
Yeah.
middle of the pack.
Yeah, so middle of the pack. They win some more games than they're supposed to. They'll be in the tournament just because they're in the Pac-12. I mean, that is what it is. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me on both ends of the court was just Colorado's athleticism compared to Nebraska's. And they were at a deficit before the game even started because of, obviously you're going to be able to see a jump from playing Chadron State to playing Colorado. But just the way Colorado was getting by guys, getting around guys, getting up in the face of guys. I mean, we both are big fans of Sam Griesel, but if you have someone as athletic and built like Neat Clifford to defend Sam Griesel, you don't have to worry about him too much because he can put the clamps on fairly easily, in my opinion.
So, a lot to unpack there. I'll play off of a lot of what you just said.
Yeah,
right
there's my rant for the day. Now he can break it down with some numbers and actual thought.
I'll start with the kind of the story of the game real quick before we kind of how it went. 10-0 start for Colorado. Nebraska did not score until the 14:55 mark when Juwan Gary got fouled on a probably not a great 3-point attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Missed the first 2, finally made the third to kind of break the scoring seal. They didn't get their first field goal until the 13:53 mark when K-State's defender fell down and he knocked down a 3 from the top of the key. So not exactly an ideal start offensively there. They kind of got it down to 17-12. K-State hit another 3 on the next possession. Same spot, slightly more contested, knocked it down. So it's a great sign. And it's like, all right, he's feeling it. 17-12, we're right back in this game after the 10-0 start. And then Colorado proceeded to hit them with a 14-2 run to stretch it out to 26-9. Credit to Nebraska for sticking around. They outscored them 17-5 to get back into that thing, cut it down to 5, and went into halftime down just 7 at 37-30. So they definitely picked up the defense over the last 8 minutes or so after allowing them to shoot close to 60% to start the game. Kind of went back and forth. Colorado scored 4, Nebraska scored 4. So you're back to that 7-point deficit. And then Colorado scored 7 straight to double that lead, pull ahead 48-34. And Nebraska just didn't have enough juice to get back into the game there. They got it down to 8, I believe, and that's as close as they got as they kind of ran out of time, didn't have enough firepower. It's tough to make a comeback and make it stick when you're not shooting threes at a high rate. And once again, Nebraska only hit 6 of them in the whole game. So that was kind of the story of the game and how it went. You talked about Keita starting for Walker, and Hoiberg said on Sports Nightly on Monday that he was kind of dealing with a sickness going in, and then the altitude hit him really hard. So he's kind of hoping that was part of the kind of the story there with Keita struggling. Said he couldn't even really make it up and down the floor. So that's unfortunate. He played 11 minutes, knocked down a nice little elbow jumper off a play from Sam Griesel early in the second half. First shot was also kind of a fadeaway jumper in the post when Nebraska didn't really have anything going. And then he grabbed 4 rebounds. So that's kind of everything he did in his 11 minutes. And Colorado outscored him by 14 when he was on the court. Oleg, on the other hand, was out there, played 15 minutes, and they were plus 12 with him on the floor. He had a nice little block shot in there as well. And yeah, I think first bucket was a little short roll down the lane, catch, put it on the deck once, and go up and finish, which is impressive. I had no idea he could do that. We saw him at the end of that Chadron State game put on a nice little move in the post. Showed off the touch there, and that's kind of what his other buckets were. Just a little kind of shoulder shake, spin, little baby hook with the left hand, and then he had a right-handed finish as well. A little kind of hook shot that hit the bottom of the rim and rolled over and in. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed. I did not anticipate Oleg being part of the rotation this year.
I didn't anticipate Oleg being a talking point aside from our rundown of the roster player by player. We've already talked about him more than I thought we would. So,
So we'll see if he can replicate this kind of production against more physical opposing bigs. But that had to have been a good sign, especially considering the Walker situation. And they also, we saw some of Wilhelm Breitenbach at the 5. They went to that a lot. It's probably his more natural spot. I think he struggled again overall, whether it's the 4 or the 5. Just kind of adjusting the speed of the game. Had a nice little kind of one of his weird, like, what the heck was that? And how did it go in shot? Where he's just kind of put on the deck, like back end spinning and little like push jump hook with the left hand. I don't really know what exactly it was, but he played 17 minutes, scored just 2 points, 2 rebounds, 2 turnovers. They outscored him by 13 when he's on the floor. So he's not there yet. What happens this season? If they're going to make any kind of progress, they need him to hopefully progress beyond where he is now, kind of get back to full strength, to full speed, and find a way to be an impact player, because he struggled so far in their 2 exhibitions. And then the other thing they stumbled on is small ball there with Juwan Gary at the 5. And Fred Hoiberg said they did not practice a single possession of that before the game, and which makes sense considering the depth at the 5 they had. You had three true posts there plus Wilhelm. So, like, I don't know that there's ever a reason to get down to the point where you have Juwan as the biggest guy out there, just based on the roster makeup. But Hoiberg tried it, and it had some success there. He had a couple of buckets there where he was able to take their opposing center, 7-footer Lawson Lovering, off the dribble. Had a nice take left, had a nice little spin move to finish for an and one, although he missed the free throw. Went 1 of 4 from the free throw line. Got to see better than that. But Gary scored 11 points, Griesel scored 10, and Bandemel scored 14 to kind of lead them in scoring there. And I think especially that kind of that 17-5 run, that was basically Sam Griesel had a nice little kind of back down fadeaway jumper, and then the behind the back to split the defender and go up for the 2-handed dunk right down the lane. Kind of just looked effortless. So. And then Oleg as well. He had a block in his first 2 buckets during that stretch. So those were the guys that really brought that energy when they kind of got themselves back in the game. And then Gary, I think some of his small ball 5 buckets came in the second half as they were making that kind of run to cut it down close again. So yeah, defensively, their transition defense needs a lot of work. That was one of the biggest problems. And I know in the box score, they've only credited Colorado with 11 fast break points. Felt like more, and I know part of that is kind of their specific definition of what a fast break point is. But there were a lot of times where Nebraska just didn't pick up guys, and they were able to beat them down the floor off of made buckets, off of missed buckets, off of turnovers. Guys just weren't organized enough to know that, all right, I got to get back and get this guy. And they got back slow. There are times where they weren't back and put them into scramble mode and gave Colorado easy opportunities. So that is probably the number one thing defensively that they need to clean up coming out of that exhibition game. And then the other thing too is it's kind of similar to what they were doing last year, where just trying to make havoc. You had guys flying all over the place, chasing guys off the line. Again, we talked about it last time, to funnel guys to the bigs, middle of the floor, try to force contested mid-range type of stuff. But they just broke down too easily. Guys were out of position. They were scrambled. They weren't sure, all right, who am I supposed to take here? I thought the centers, all of them have done a pretty good job of rotating to be where they need to for that style of defense. It's kind of after that where things break down, where nobody covers the dump off or give a wide open skip to the 3, the corner 3, and nobody rotates over, or guys aren't sure who has to take who when they're scrambling. So what I see is I think the effort's good. They're a little bit more athletic, a little bit better personnel than last year in terms of what they can be defensively. But there's a lot of execution things that they need to polish up in order to have a chance to be good on defense. And the other thing on that point that Hoiberg talked about, we weren't sure kind of what Adams Howard's influence would look like this year. And because he's done various things throughout in his past, whether it's trapping, full court, matchup zone, all these types of things. Hoiberg said they have a press in, but it's not. They have zone in rather, but it's not something that they're going to use a lot of. They're going to be primarily man to man. Said that on the Sports Nightly on Monday. So I found that of note. So they're not going to do a lot of zone, but they will. And I don't know that they're going to do a lot of full court trapping, but they are increasing the pickup point with guys like Emmanuel Vandermel and Denham Dawson. You just got to make sure that there's not too much gambling there and you're not getting yourself out of position and giving up numbers the other way. And Vandermel did have a nice play where kind of early in that second half where stripped his man at half court, took it the other way, kind of split two defenders, little Euro finish type of move. So that's what you want to see. And and Hoiberg said Dawson is that next guy up in terms of guarding the other team's point guard, guarding the other team's quickest player. That I don't love that. I think it's more by default because they don't have anybody that's laterally quick. They're just lacking that on the. I think Dawson's a really athletic player. He's explosive. I don't know that he's got the kind of quick twitch to guard 6 foot point guards. So that's something they're going to struggle with all season long. Even Bandamel at 6'4". I don't know that his feet are incredible. I think they're good, but not elite there. So that's something they're going to have to find a way to survive their guarding at the point of attack to make sure that they're not constantly in rotation and in scramble mode. But those were kind of my defensive impressions. And then offensively, we talked about it during the game. We talked about beforehand, like who's going to be able to beat their man and create an advantage. And the answer for long stretches of that Colorado game was nobody. And Hoiberg talked about this. I'll ask him about this because the plan was not to run their sets in the preseason. They only had a few in. He kind of same thing, kept it really simple. Just wanted to play their base offense where guys had to read, react, 4 out, 1 in, have the big guy popping up into the middle of the floor. It didn't look great. They weren't able to get what they needed out of that. So Hoiberg's doesn't sound like too worried about some of the guys that have been struggling, like CJ Wilcher. He thinks that's the guy that will benefit from them opening up the playbook and being able to run plays for him to get him going a little bit more. And then maybe once he's feeling it, he'll be able to knock down some more shots within the flow of the offense, things like that. But Greasel is the one guy that I thought consistently, as the game went on, early on, they were really taken away. But he did find a way to get in the paint and make plays and showed off that little baby jump hook that I kind of highlighted in my scouting report on him, kind of the back down, working his way to his spot and then going up and finishing over the top. We saw him do that, I think, 3 different times in the second half. We saw that fade away in the first half as well for his first bucket. So that's going to be a big part of their offense. But I think I need to see them not fall into 4 guys standing and watching when Sam goes to work, because that's when it's easy to dig in, to send a help, to send a defender from the backside when he goes to that spin move. If people are just standing and watching and they don't have to worry about a cutter or a guy being a 3-point threat, I think they got to work on their off-ball movement around Sam if you truly want to build your offense around Greasel being the guy that is consistently making plays off the bounce, which is what Hoiberg said. He wants to have the ball in his hands a lot of the time.
Yeah, that was one thing. We talked about that during the game too, and that was kind of one of my big takeaways. And we talked about them doing a lot of things they did last year defensively. One thing they did last year offensively was sit around and watch number 5 make a play. It's a different guy wearing number 5, but we saw how that played out last year with Bryce, and we just can't do that with Sam. I will say, I don't know if Fred said it on the radio, but he did say to us post game that they went from running 2 sets against Shootaround State to running 3 sets against Colorado. I don't know what the third set was, but he said they went from 2 to 3, and now they're going to open it up. I know coaches. I was around the Division I coaching staff for 3 years. I know they'll do whatever they can to not have anything be on film. And when you're playing 2 exhibition games that are going to be on Synergy at some point, there's film out there. You don't want to give something away. We know Hoiberg's a big X's and O's guy, especially like drawing stuff up out of timeouts, like that sort of thing. Like that's his bread and butter. So who knows what it'll look like on Monday, but we can only sure as hell hope that it doesn't look like it's looked these first 2 games on offense. Yeah, that game. I've seen a lot of people go full doom and gloom. They're winning 6 games. Fred's getting fired mid-season. So-and-so. I think the number one rule of exhibition games, and it doesn't matter if you're playing a D2 like Shootaround State, if you lose to a D2 like Louisville did this past weekend, or if you're doing a charity exhibition against a fellow D1, you can't like take it as gospel, but you can find, there are things that can stick out and be like, that's something that needs to be worked on. That's something that's promising. But at the end of the day, it's still, it's the first week of November. I'm sure this team will not, I hope, look like they do now in February or even January or whenever. But I mean, it is an exhibition game we're talking about at the end of the day. So,
and so I think that kind of wraps up my thoughts on that as well. I don't think we need to talk about the exhibition game anymore at this point. For moving on, all these games are going to count. And hope Fred won't have the excuse of we didn't open the playbook. So if they can't score moving forward, then that's going to be a serious problem. So I saw plenty of things that they're going to have to get better at on both sides of the ball, and how many of those things they can address here in the next week or 2 will determine kind of how the season gets off to a start. But they'll have 2 games that first week. First is against Maine on opening night, Monday at PBA. Maine, for the record, is opened the season at 351 in KenPom. There are now 363 teams in Division I. So bottom 15 team in the country expected to be is coming to PBA. So if Nebraska can't look good against Maine, then it's officially time to start panicking. Even then, Derek Walker's, I think, presence impacts that as well. So there will still be chance for them to get better later in the season. But there's a lot of things that they got to clean up, and Monday will be their first test. We haven't really discussed this. Not quite sure yet when we will record again. They have Monday, and then they play again Thursday against Omaha. We could go between the 2 games, or could wait until we see both of them, because they don't play again until the following Thursday for their 3rd game. But we'll discuss that off the pod. In the meantime, stay tuned to your feed, subscribe if you haven't already, and the next episode will auto-populate in your feed once we record it. So you want to kind of send us out here?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything, to piggyback off what you said about Maine, and this will involve their first 2 games are bye games against 300+ ranked KenPom teams, both with first-year coaches. So I know, UNO getting their start with Chris Crutchfield. I know Maine hired Chris Markwood. I don't know how I remember that, but that is their coach. So it's two 300+ ranked KenPom teams, then a trip to St. John's, and then the 3rd to last preseason ranked KenPom team comes to PBA in Arkansas Pine Bluff. And I watched them play in person last year, and they don't run sets. So Obviously, St. John's is the big one there. But yeah, like you said, Monday, opening night, not just for Nebraska, but for college basketball as a whole. And stay locked in with the Nebraska Shootaround podcast for your Husker basketball coverage throughout this season.